is she wearing?
How absolutely dreadful.
You really thought he chose you? The voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It slipped through the ballroom. Sharp, precise, cutting deeper than sound should. Mary didn't turn. She couldn't, because something cold pressed lightly against her back. For a second, her mind stalled, like her body knew before she did. Then, rip. The sound was clean, intentional, not loud, but final. A breath caught somewhere behind her. A glass clinked. Someone whispered, "Wait, what?" Mary's fingers moved instantly, instinct, not thought, sliding over the curve of her stomach. Protect. 7 months. Her breath hitched, just once. Before she forced it steady, the air shifted, not physically, but socially. Eyes, everywhere, watching, measuring, judging. She could feel it before she even looked down. Fabric, loose, open, exposed from shoulder to hip, and before she could fully process it, cold liquid splashed across her back. She flinched, just slightly. Champagne. It slid down her skin slowly, deliberately, like the moment wanted to last. A soft laugh followed, too casual, too comfortable. Well, I guess that dress couldn't handle the truth. Mary blinked. Once, twice. Her hand stayed on her stomach, because right now, nothing else mattered. Not the whispers, not the laughter, not even the humiliation pressing in from every side. Just stay calm, stay still, stay in control. Mary didn't move right away. She couldn't afford to, because the moment she did, the reality would settle in fully. Her fingers pressed a little firmer against her stomach. Subtle, protective, instinctive, easy, easy. She whispered under her breath. No one heard it, or maybe they did, and chose not to react. Her baby shifted, a small movement, but to her, it felt loud, too loud. Her throat tightened, not from embarrassment, not even from anger, fear, raw, immediate, because her mind had already started racing. What if that blade had gone deeper? What if she slipped? What if... She stopped herself. No, not here, not now. Her breathing slowed, on purpose, controlled, measured, but her hand didn't leave her stomach. It stayed there, grounded, firm, as if she could shield life itself with just her palm. Behind her, a voice clicked again, amused, unbothered. "You should really be more careful," the woman said lightly. "I mean, carrying something so fragile in a place like this." Mary's eyes closed briefly. Just a second. Well, that wasn't an accident. That was a warning. And suddenly, this wasn't just humiliation anymore. This was something else. Something sharper. Something intentional. Mary turned slowly. Not rushed. Not reactive. Controlled. Because if she moved too fast, she might lose it. And she refused to lose anything here. Not her dignity. Not her composure. Not in front of people who were already waiting for her to fall. Her eyes lifted and landed on her red dress, perfect smile, scissors still resting loosely in her hand. Like none of this mattered, like Mary didn't matter. A few people stepped back, not out of respect, but to get a better view. "Oops," the woman said, tilting her head slightly. "Guess some things just fall apart when they're not meant to last." A few quiet laughs. Mary didn't respond, not yet, because her eyes were already searching, scanning past faces, past reactions, looking for one person, Walker, and there he was, pushing through the crowd. Sharp suit, focused expression, familiar, too familiar. Walker. Her voice came out softer than she expected, but he didn't come to her. He went straight to the woman in red, grabbed her arm, tight, leaning in, low voice, urgent. "I told you to wait." Mary stilled, completely. The noise in the room faded, not because it stopped, but because something inside her did. Oh, so this wasn't random. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned, and somehow, that hurt more than the humiliation ever could. Have you ever been humiliated by someone you trusted, right in front of people who were already waiting to see you fall? Not behind closed doors, not in private, but publicly, where every glance feels like judgment, and every whisper sounds louder than it should. What would you do if your husband, the one person who was supposed to stand beside you, chose another woman, right in front of you? No hesitation, no explanation, just chose. Would you break? Would you fight? Or would you stand there, holding everything in, pretending you're still okay when you're clearly not? Because Mary, she didn't scream, she didn't cry, she didn't even move, and somehow, that made the moment even heavier, like the silence itself was saying something no one else could. But here's the real question. What do you do when the person who betrayed you was never really on your side to begin with? Before we go any further, just take a second. If you've ever been in a moment where you had to hold yourself together, when everything inside you was breaking, go ahead. Like this video, seriously, because stories like this, they don't just entertain, they hit somewhere deeper. And if you're new here, this is what we do. Real stories, real emotions, real consequences. So make sure you subscribe, because the one you're about to witness, it doesn't end the way you think it will, not even close. And trust me, you're going to want to stay until the very last second, because what happens next, it's not just about betrayal anymore. It becomes something else entirely, something bigger, something no one in that room was ready for, because while everyone was focused on Mary, on the dress, the whispers, the quiet humiliation unfolding in real time, there was someone else in that room, watching, not reacting, not interrupting, just observing from the entrance, still, silent, unshaken. A man most people didn't even notice at first, but the few who did, they looked twice, then looked away, quickly, because something about him didn't ask for attention. It commanded it. Mary hadn't seen him yet, but if she had, well, she would have known. This wasn't going to end quietly, not tonight, not after this, because the man standing at that door, he wasn't just her father. He was the kind of man who didn't argue, didn't shout, didn't warn. He ended things completely, and before this night was over, every single person in that room was going to understand exactly what that meant. Welcome back to Mr. Leo Stories, where life's most powerful lessons come wrapped in unforgettable tales. So let me ask you, what really happens when two worlds collide, when power meets pride, and truth shows up uninvited? Take a breath, because this story, it's only just beginning. No one moved at first. That was the strange part. A room full of powerful people, dressed in elegance, surrounded by wealth, and yet silence held them in place like something fragile had just cracked in the center of it all. Mary stood there, still, back slightly exposed, champagne drying against her skin, her hand resting over her stomach. Firm, unmoving. Across from her, the woman in red twirled the scissors once between her fingers. Casual, like this was entertainment. Wow, she said softly, glancing around. No one's going to say anything? A man near the back cleared his throat, then quickly looked away. A woman beside him leaned in slightly, whispering behind her glass. I knew it wouldn't last. Mary heard that. Of course she did. She heard everything. But her face didn't change. Not yet. Walker's hand was still gripping the woman's arm. Tight. Controlled. You shouldn't have done that here, he muttered under his breath. The woman smiled wider. Oh, please. You think I was going to keep hiding? She replied. I'm tired of playing quiet. Mary's gaze shifted slowly, landing on Walker, waiting, not for an explanation, not even for an apology, just something, anything. He didn't look at her, not fully, not the way he used to. Instead, his attention stayed divided, half on the woman beside him, half on the growing tension around them. That was enough, more than enough. Mary inhaled slowly, steadying herself. Her voice, when it came, was low, controlled. So this is what you meant. All those late nights? Walker's jaw tightened. It's not what it looks like. A few people shifted at that. Uncomfortable, because even they knew. That line didn't belong here. Not now. Not after this. Mary's fingers pressed slightly into her stomach again, grounding, holding, because if she let go for even a second, everything inside her might follow. The woman in red let out a soft laugh, light, amused, completely untouched by the weight of the moment. "Oh, don't do that," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "Don't act confused now." She stepped closer, slow, intentional. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor, each step drawing more attention. "You knew," she continued, "maybe not the details, but you knew something wasn't right." Mary didn't step back, didn't flinch. Even as the space between them disappeared, the woman leaned in slightly, just enough for her voice to lower. "But you stayed anyway." A pause. Her eyes dropped briefly to Mary's stomach, then lifted again. Sharp. "Was it for security?" she asked quietly. "Or did you really think a man like him was going to settle for this?" Mary's breathing slowed, not because she was calm, but because she was choosing not to react, choosing control over impulse, choosing silence over collapse. Well, not silence forever, just not yet. Behind them, the murmurs started growing, less hidden now, more open. Look at her. She came out of nowhere. These situations never end well. Mary caught pieces, fragments, enough to understand the direction, enough to feel the weight of it pressing in from all sides. The woman in red straightened, smoothing her dress like she had just finished something minor. "You should thank me, honestly," she added, tilting her head. "I saved you from embarrassing yourself further." Mary finally looked directly at her, not rushed, not emotional, just direct. Her voice came out quiet, even, measured. "No," she said. A small pause, just enough to settle the room again. "You exposed yourself." The room didn't stay quiet this time. It shifted, not loudly, not all at once, but enough. Enough for the whispers to stop hiding. They always act so confident at first. Did anyone really think this was real? She played her part well. I'll give her that. Mary stood there, hearing it, not every word, but enough to understand the tone, enough to feel the judgment settling into the space around her like something thick, heavy, unwelcome. A woman near the front leaned slightly toward her companion, voice low but careless. "These situations are always the same. They come in, marry up, and then..." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. The meaning carried anyway. Mary's jaw tightened, just slightly. Her fingers curled gently against her stomach again, not in fear this time, in control, because reacting here? That's what they expected. That's what they were waiting for. For her to break, for her to prove every assumption they had already decided about her. Not today. Across the room, a man adjusted his cufflinks, watching with quiet interest. Another lifted his phone slightly, then lowered it again when he realized how bad that would look. No one stepped in, no one defended her, because this wasn't their problem. This was entertainment, social theater, and Mary. She had just been placed at the center of it. The woman in red glanced around, clearly enjoying the shift. "You hear that?" she said softly, almost sweet. "They're not even surprised." Mary didn't answer, but her eyes moved, slowly, taking in faces, expressions, reactions, and something inside her. Settled, not broken, not defeated, just clear about where she stood, and exactly what this room thought of her. Mary exhaled slowly, controlled, measured. Her hand never left her stomach, not once, even now, even here, because beneath everything else, the noise, the whispers, the humiliation, there was something more important, someone more important. A small movement came again, soft, barely noticeable to anyone else, but to her, it anchored her, pulled her back from the edge of everything threatening to rise. "I'm okay," she whispered under her breath, more for herself than anything else. Then, she looked at Walker, fully this time, no hesitation, no searching, just direct, and for a moment, just a moment, something flickered across his face. Regret, maybe, but it didn't stay, because the woman in red shifted closer to him, her hand brushing lightly against his arm, not accidental, intentional, claiming, "You don't have to keep pretending," she said, her voice smooth. "It's already obvious." Walker didn't pull away. That was it. That single decision, small on the surface, but loud in meaning. Mary watched it happen, didn't interrupt, didn't react immediately. But something in her chest tightened, not sharply, just enough to remind her this still mattered. Or maybe it used to. "Walker," she said quietly. He hesitated, then finally looked at her. "Yes?" So simple, so distant, like none of this had weight. Mary held his gaze. A long second passed, then another. "You brought her here," she said. "Not a question. A fact." Walker exhaled. Brief, controlled. "I was going to handle it," he replied. Mary nodded once. Slow, understanding, accepting, and somehow, that hurt more than anything else tonight, because in that moment, there was no confusion left, no doubt, no illusion, just truth, standing there, clear, undeniable. He had already chosen. The silence that followed didn't last, but Mary didn't rush to fill it. She stood exactly where she was, back straight, shoulders steady, one hand resting over her stomach, the other relaxed at her side, not defensive, not aggressive, just composed, the kind of composure that didn't ask for attention, but demanded it anyway. A few people shifted uncomfortably, because this wasn't what they expected. Not after everything that had just happened. They expected tears, a scene, a reaction they could label, justify, dismiss, but Mary gave them none of that. Instead, she adjusted her posture slightly, small movement, controlled, like she was reclaiming space that had just been taken from her. "Well," someone murmured faintly from the side. Unsure whether to speak louder, no one followed, because something about her stillness made interruption feel inappropriate. Even the woman in red paused for a second, just a second, as if recalculating. Mary's gaze moved slowly across the room, not searching this time, observing, taking note. Faces that avoided her eyes, faces that stared too long, faces that had already decided who she was, and what this meant. She let that sit, let them sit in it. Then finally, she spoke, not loudly, not sharply, just enough. "If this is what you wanted," she said, her voice even, "then I hope it was worth it." No tremble, no crack, just truth. And somehow, that unsettled the room more than any outburst ever could. The woman in red tilted her head slightly. Confusion flickered. Brief, but real. Because that wasn't the reaction she had planned for. "Oh, it was," she replied quickly, trying to regain control. "Trust me, this was long overdue." Mary nodded once, slow, acknowledging, but not agreeing. And that subtle difference, it shifted something, the balance. "You could have handled this privately," Mary continued, "unless..." She paused, not for effect, but to choose her words carefully. This was never about honesty. The woman's smile tightened, a fraction, barely noticeable. "Unless you were paying attention." Walker glanced between them, tension settling into his posture. "Mary, this isn't..." She raised her hand slightly, not aggressive, just enough to stop him. "I'm not asking," she said. Calm, clear, final. That landed, because, for the first time tonight, she wasn't reacting to them. They were reacting to her. Walker stepped back half a step. Not dramatic, but noticeable. And the woman beside him? She felt it, Her fingers tightened briefly around his arm before relaxing again. Possessive, but uncertain now. Mary shifted her weight slightly, steadying herself again. Her breathing remained controlled, measured, but there was something else beneath it. Something building, not visible yet, not fully, but present. And the room felt it. That quiet change, that subtle shift from humiliation to control. Mary held her position. From the outside, nothing had changed. Same posture, same calm expression. But inside, it wasn't still, not completely. Her fingers pressed slightly into her stomach again. Not enough to show, just enough to ground herself. Her breathing slowed, then caught. Just briefly, she closed her eyes for half a second. Not long enough for most people to notice, but long enough for her to reset. Because everything was trying to surface at once. The humiliation, the betrayal, the whispers that hadn't stopped, and the realization that none of this was accidental. Her throat tightened, not from weakness, but from restraint, from holding back everything that wanted to break free. Her shoulders lifted slightly with a quiet inhale, then lowered again, controlled, always controlled. Across from her, the woman in red was still watching, waiting, almost curious now, as if she expected the crack to finally show. Mary opened her eyes again. Clear, focused, but softer. Just slightly, not fragile, just human. Her hand moved gently over her stomach. A slow, protective motion. And this time, she didn't hide it, didn't minimize it, because this was real, more real than anything else happening in that room. A small movement answered her again from within, and, for a brief moment, everything else faded. The noise, the people, the tension, all of it, leaving just her, and the quiet reminder of why she couldn't fall apart. Not here, not now. Well, this is impressive, the woman in red said slowly. Her tone had changed, less playful now, more probing. You're either very strong, she added, taking a small step forward, or very used to pretending. Mary didn't respond immediately. She didn't need to, because silence right now was louder than anything she could say. The woman's eyes narrowed slightly, not liking that, not liking the lack of reaction. So, tell me, she continued, circling just a little. Testing. How long were you planning to keep this going? Mary's gaze followed her, steady, unshaken. As long as it was real, she replied. Simple, direct. And that answer? It landed differently. Walker shifted again behind her, uncomfortable. Because now, this wasn't just exposure. This was reflection, and he didn't like what it showed. The woman in red let out a short breath, almost a scoff. Well, it's over now. Mary tilted her head slightly, a small pause. Then, we'll see. Across the room, near the entrance, the man who had been standing there the entire time hadn't moved. Not once. His gaze remained fixed, not on the crowd, not on the spectacle, on Mary, watching, measuring, understanding more than anyone else in that room. His expression didn't change, didn't need to, because the decision had already been made, quietly, without announcement. And while the rest of the room was still focused on the surface of the moment, he was already thinking ahead, calculating outcomes, consequences, and exactly how this would end. Mary didn't say anything else. Not to Walker, not to the woman, not to anyone. She just turned, slowly, carefully, like every movement had to be intentional now, or she might lose control. The crowd parted without being asked, not out of respect, but because something about her silence made it impossible to stand in her way. Her heels echoed softly against the floor as she walked, steady, measured, until the noise of the ballroom faded behind her. The hallway felt different, quieter, colder, safer. She reached the restroom door and pushed it open. The moment it closed behind her, everything shifted. The lock clicked, and that was it. Her shoulders dropped, not dramatically, just enough to show the weight she had been carrying. Mary stepped toward the sink, gripping its edge. Her reflection stared back at her, dress torn, makeup slightly smudged, eyes holding more than they should. For a second, she just looked like she didn't fully recognize the person staring back. Then her breathing changed, subtle at first, then uneven. Her chest rose sharply, then fell again, slower this time, but not steady. Not yet. Her fingers tightened against the sink, knuckles paling, because now there was no audience, no expectation, no need to hold it together for anyone else. Just her, and the truth of what had just happened. A small sound escaped her, not quite a sob, not quite a breath, something in between, and that was all it took. Mary's hand moved instantly to her stomach. Protective, instinctive, grounding. "Hey, hey," she whispered softly. Her voice was different now, lower, warmer, like she was speaking into something fragile, something only she could feel. "I'm here. I got you." Her thumb traced a slow circle over the fabric of her dress, gentle, reassuring, as if she could transfer calm through touch alone. A small movement answered her, light, but enough. Her breath caught again, this time for a different reason. "Oh, okay, she murmured. Her forehead rested lightly against the mirror, eyes closing, not to shut anything out, but to hold on to this moment, because this was what mattered. Not the room, not the humiliation, not even Walker. Just this. "You're okay," she continued softly. "And I'm okay. We're okay." The words weren't fully true, not yet, but she needed them to be, needed something steady to hold on to. Her fingers spread slightly across her stomach, firm now, anchored. Well, a small pause followed. Her lips parted, then closed again, because there was more she wanted to say, more she needed to say. But the words didn't come out right away, not clean, not complete. "I didn't see it," she admitted quietly, her voice barely above a breath. "I thought, maybe." She stopped, shook her head slightly. No, that part didn't matter anymore. What mattered was now, and what came next. Her hand pressed just a little more firmly. "I've got you," she said again, this time stronger, not louder, but certain. Mary lifted her head slowly from the mirror. Her reflection hadn't changed, but something inside her had. Her breathing wasn't steady yet, not fully. It came in waves, one controlled, the next slightly uneven. Her fingers loosened from the sink, then tightened again, like her body hadn't decided whether to let go or hold on. A quiet exhale slipped past her lips, long, measured, but it trembled at the end. She swallowed hard, trying to push everything back down, because once it started, it wouldn't stop easily. Her shoulders rose again with a deeper inhale, held, then released slowly. Again, this time steadier. Her hand returned to her stomach, always there, always grounding. "You're okay," she whispered again, not as reassurance now, but as rhythm, something to match her breathing, something to keep her from slipping. Her knees weakened slightly, just a fraction, enough for her to shift her weight quickly, catching herself before it showed. No one was there to see it, but still, she refused to fall. Her fingers brushed lightly against the edge of the torn fabric. She paused, looked at it, really looked at it, and for a second, her expression cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough. Enough for the pain to show. Before she pulled it back in, her lips pressed together, tight, containing, because crying right now would feel like giving something away, and she had already lost enough tonight. So instead, she straightened slightly, adjusted her stance, pulled herself back together piece by piece, not perfect, not whole, but standing, still standing. Mary reached for a paper towel, slowly, carefully, like even the smallest movement required intention now. She dampened it under the faucet, then brought it to her neck, dabbing gently at the dried champagne. The cold was gone, but the memory of it, still clung. She didn't rush, didn't try to fix everything at once. Just small steps, one at a time. Her reflection watched her, quiet, unforgiving, but also stronger than it had been a few minutes ago, because she hadn't broken, not completely, and that mattered, more than anyone in that ballroom would ever understand. Well, she exhaled softly, a faint, almost tired sound, then straightened fully. Her hand returned to her stomach again, one last time before she moved. Not out of fear, but out of promise, silent, unspoken, but real. And maybe that's the part people don't talk about enough. Those moments where you're falling apart inside, but somehow still standing on the outside, still breathing, still choosing not to collapse where everyone expects you to. If you've ever been there, where holding it together felt harder than breaking, go ahead, comment, stay strong. Because sometimes, strength doesn't look loud. It doesn't look powerful. It looks like this, quiet, unseen, but unshaken. Mary took one last look at herself, then turned toward the door, ready to step back into everything she had just walked away from, but not as the same person who left it. The restroom door opened. Mary stepped out, composed, not untouched, but controlled, and as she walked back toward the ballroom, something shifted in her mind, not the pain, not the betrayal, but the memory of where it all started. Because this didn't begin tonight. It began long before the dress, the whispers, the woman in red. It began at a dinner, a business dinner. The room had been quieter that night, not soft, but controlled. Low conversations, polished laughter, the steady rhythm of people who were used to power. Mary had arrived on time, not early, not late, on time, simple black dress, minimal jewelry, no need to prove anything, because she wasn't there to impress anyone. She was there to work. At least, that's what she told herself. Her heels moved across the floor with quiet confidence as she approached the table. A few heads turned, not dramatically, but enough. Because she didn't carry herself like someone trying to be accepted. She carried herself like she already was. Well, you must be Mary. The voice came from across the table, calm, measured. She looked up, and there he was, Walker, seated at the head, suit sharp, posture relaxed, eyes already studying her, not welcoming, assessing. Mary gave a small nod. Yes. No extended introduction, no unnecessary warmth. Just acknowledgement. Walker gestured lightly toward the empty seat beside him. Sit. Not rude, not polite, just direct. Mary took the seat without hesitation, set her folder down neatly in front of her, then looked at him, fully, matching his gaze without effort. That caught him off guard, not visibly, but internally. He leaned back slightly, observing. You're not what I expected, he said. Mary didn't smile, didn't react immediately. What were you expecting? She asked. Her tone wasn't defensive. It wasn't curious either, just neutral. Walker's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. Someone more accommodating. A faint pause settled between them. Mary tilted her head just slightly. Then you should have hired someone else. A couple of people at the table shifted, subtle, but noticeable. Because that response wasn't typical, not in a room like this. Walker's gaze sharpened. Interest. Just a little. Confident, he said. Mary shrugged lightly. Prepared. That landed differently. Because confidence could be dismissed. Preparation couldn't. Walker leaned forward slightly now, elbows resting on the table, eyes still on her. Do you always answer like that? He asked. Mary met his gaze without hesitation. Only when I'm being tested. A beat, then another, and something unspoken passed between them. Not attraction, not yet, but but recognition, because for the first time in a long time, someone wasn't trying to please him, and he didn't know whether to like that or shut it down immediately. The dinner continued, but the energy at the table had shifted, subtly, quietly, centered, because even as conversations moved on, something had already locked into place between them. Walker tapped his glass lightly, drawing attention back. "Let's move forward," he said. "I want clarity on the proposal." Mary nodded once, reached for her folder, opened it with calm precision. No rush, no nervousness. She placed a document in front of him. "This outlines the restructuring model," she said. "Short-term cost adjustment, long-term scalability." Walker glanced down briefly, then back at her. "You think this works?" he asked. "I know it does." No hesitation, no qualifiers, just certainty. A few people exchanged glances, because that tone, that level of directness, wasn't something most people used with him. Walker's fingers tapped once against the table. "You're making assumptions," he said. Mary shook her head slightly. "No," she replied. "I'm making calculations." That was different, and he knew it. "Explain." She leaned forward slightly, not invading space, but not avoiding it either. "Your current structure is efficient," she said, "but it's rigid. It limits growth." Walker's eyes stayed on her, focused, unblinking. "And you think you can fix that?" Mary held his gaze. "I already did." A pause, longer this time, because that answer wasn't expected, wasn't safe, but it was compelling. Walker leaned back again, studying her differently now, not as a variable, not as a hire, but as something else, something unpredictable. "Well?" he said, slowly, a slight shift in his tone, less dismissive, more curious. "That's a bold claim." Mary didn't react, didn't soften it. "Not bold," she said. Accurate. Silence followed, but it wasn't empty. It was charged, because somewhere between the tension, something else had started forming. Not trust, not respect, not yet, but interest, real interest. And that was dangerous, because Walker didn't like things he couldn't control, and Mary was quickly becoming one of them. The meeting should have ended there. It didn't, because even after the documents were reviewed, after the others began shifting into side conversations, Walker didn't move on. His attention stayed on Mary, not openly, not in a way others would easily notice, but consistently, measured. He tapped the edge of the document once more. "You're assuming compliance from departments that don't cooperate," he said. Mary didn't look down, didn't recheck anything. "They'll cooperate," she replied. Walker's brow lifted slightly. "Because you say so." Mary's lips pressed together briefly, not annoyed, just considering, because the numbers leave them no choice. A quiet reaction came from someone further down the table. Almost a chuckle, quickly swallowed. Walker caught it. So did Mary. Neither acknowledged it. Walker leaned in slightly, closer this time. "You talk like you've already been inside the system," he said. Mary held his gaze. "I have a beat." Walker's eyes narrowed, just enough to show interest, sharpening into focus. "That wasn't in your introduction." Mary tilted her head. "I didn't think it was necessary." That answer lingered, because it wasn't defensive, it wasn't apologetic, it was selective, and that told him something. "You decide what's necessary?" he asked. Mary met him evenly. "I decide what's relevant." A longer pause followed, the kind that made other conversations at the table feel distant, less important, because right here, something was unfolding that didn't need an audience. Walker leaned back again, but slower this time, like he wasn't disengaging, just recalibrating. "You're either very confident," he said quietly, "or very comfortable taking risks." Mary's response came without delay. "Those aren't opposites." That shifted something again, not dramatically, but enough, because she wasn't backing down. She wasn't adjusting to fit the room. She was setting her own pace, and Walker, for the first time in a long time, was following it. A server approached, placing a glass of water beside Mary. She nodded once, in thanks. Small, polite, then returned her attention right back to Walker. No distraction, no hesitation. That didn't go unnoticed. Most people try harder to impress me, he said. Mary picked up the glass, took a small sip, set it back down. I'm not most people. Simple, flat, but it carried weight. Walker's lips curved slightly again. Not amusement, not quite approval. Something in between. And what exactly are you? He asked. Mary's gaze didn't shift, not even slightly. Someone who doesn't need this table to define her. That landed, not softly, not harshly, just truthfully. And for a second, Walker didn't respond. Because he wasn't used to hearing that. Not here, not from someone sitting across from him. And definitely not from someone who was supposed to be working for him. But instead of shutting it down, he leaned into it, just a little, because something about her refusal to bend made him want to see how far it would go. The dinner had thinned out slightly. A few people excused themselves. Others shifted into quieter conversations. But Mary remained seated, and so did Walker. The space between them felt different now, less formal, more direct. Walker's fingers rested lightly against the table. Still, controlled. You're good, he said finally. Not a compliment. An observation. Mary nodded once. I know. No hesitation. No false modesty. Just acceptance. Walker studied her. Longer this time. Because confidence like that, it usually came with something behind it. A reason. Or a motive. And what do you want? He asked. Mary's expression didn't change. From this job? Walker didn't clarify. He didn't need to. Mary understood the question, and what it implied. She leaned back slightly, matching his earlier posture, relaxed, but not careless. Clarity, she said. Walker's brow tightened slightly. That's not a goal. Mary shook her head once. It is if you've worked in spaces where people pretend too much. A pause. Walker's gaze sharpened again. Because that answer? It didn't play into anything he expected. You're not here for money, he said. Mary didn't respond immediately. Not because she was unsure, but because she was choosing how much to give. Well, a small pause followed. Her fingers brushed lightly against the edge of her folder. I don't stay where I'm not respected. That was it. No long explanation, no justification, just a boundary. Clear, defined, and that was where the shift happened. Because Walker didn't trust easily, didn't believe easily, and people who spoke like that, they usually wanted something more than they admitted. His eyes held hers, steady, unblinking. Everyone wants something, he said. Mary met him without hesitation. Yes, a beat, then, but not everyone is willing to lose themselves to get it. That stayed, hung between them, unresolved. Walker leaned back slightly again, not disengaging, just thinking, because now, this wasn't just about capability. It wasn't just about business. It was about her, and the one thing he couldn't quite place. He didn't trust it. Didn't trust how easily she stood her ground. Didn't trust how unaffected she seemed by pressure. Didn't trust how she didn't try to win him over. And that made her dangerous. Mary gathered her folder slowly, not in a rush to leave, but signaling something else. Completion. I'll send the finalized version in the morning, she said. Walker nodded once, still watching her, still measuring. But now, with something else mixed in, something quieter, something less controlled. Interest, real, unavoidable. Mary stood, adjusted her posture slightly, then looked down at him one last time. Good night, Walker. No hesitation, no softness, just final. And as she turned to leave, Walker didn't stop her, didn't call her back, didn't say anything at all. But his gaze followed her, all the way to the door, because something had just started, whether he trusted it or not. And deep down, that bothered him more than anything else. It didn't happen all at once. There was no clear moment where things changed, no line they crossed, and suddenly, everything became something else. It was gradual, subtle, built in spaces that weren't supposed to matter. Late evenings in the office, meetings that stretched longer than necessary, conversations that started professional, then lingered just a little too long. Mary would be reviewing documents, focused, precise, and Walker, he'd be standing nearby, not speaking, just watching. At first, she ignored it. Then she noticed. Then she stopped pretending she didn't. "You're staring," she said one evening without looking up. Walker didn't deny it. "I'm observing," he replied. Mary flipped a page. Calm. "Find anything useful?" A pause, long enough to feel more than I expected. That made her look up. Finally, their eyes met, and for a second, the room felt smaller, quieter, like everything outside of that moment had stepped back. Walker moved slightly closer, not enough to touch, but enough to change the air between them. "You don't perform," he said. Mary held his gaze. "Neither do you." That wasn't entirely true, and they both knew it. The silence stretched, not awkward, just heavy. Walker's hand lifted slightly, almost like he was about to reach for her face, but it stopped, midway, suspended, because something held him back. Not uncertainty, not fear, distrust. Mary noticed. Of course she did. And instead of closing the distance, she stepped back, just once, creating space again. "Don't start something you don't believe in," she said quietly. Her voice wasn't sharp. It wasn't emotional. It was certain. Walker's hand dropped slowly, and just like that, the moment ended, but it didn't disappear. It stayed, lingering, unfinished. After that, things didn't go back to normal. They couldn't, because once a moment like that exists, it changes everything around it. Even the silence felt different, charged, aware. There were more late nights, more conversations that didn't need to happen, but did. One evening, they found themselves alone again. No meeting scheduled, no reason to stay, but neither of them left. Mary stood by the window, city lights stretching out below, calm, distant. Walker leaned against the desk behind her, watching, always watching. "You could have taken another offer," he said. Mary didn't turn. "I did." A pause. Walker frowned slightly. "And?" "I declined." That pulled his attention in sharper. "Why?" Mary's fingers rested lightly against the glass. Cool. Grounding. "Well." A small pause settled in, "because I wanted to see how this would turn out." She turned slightly then, not fully, just enough to meet his eyes from over her shoulder. "And?" he asked. Mary held his gaze. A faint shift in her expression, not quite a smile, still deciding. That did something subtle, but real. Walker pushed himself off the desk, took a step closer, then another, until the distance between them was minimal, not touching, but close enough to feel. "You're difficult to read," he said. Mary didn't move away this time, but she didn't step closer either. "Good," she replied. A breath passed between them, quiet, measured. Walker's gaze dropped briefly, to her lips, then back to her eyes. That moment, right there, balanced on the edge of something irreversible. And again, he didn't cross it, didn't close the distance, didn't act. Mary noticed, again, and this time, she didn't step back. She just waited. 1 second, 2, then she turned away, breaking it herself, because if he wouldn't trust the moment, she wouldn't carry it alone. And just like before, it remained unfinished. It wasn't romantic. That's the part no one would have believed. There was no grand confession, no carefully planned moment, no clear declaration of love. It happened, almost casually, in between meetings, in between decisions that had nothing to do with emotions. They were in Walker's office, late, again. The city outside dimmed into quiet lights. Mary stood across from his desk, reviewing something on her tablet. Focused, unbothered. Walker watched her, like he had many times before. But this time, his expression held something different. Less calculation, more urgency. "We should get married." The words landed flat, direct, unadorned. Mary didn't react immediately, didn't look up right away, like she was making sure she heard him correctly. Then, slowly, she lifted her gaze, met his eyes. Silence stretched between them. Not shocked, not emotional, just processing. "Why?" she asked. Simple, clear. Walker didn't hesitate. "It makes things easier." That answer stayed in the air, heavy, because it wasn't wrong. But it wasn't right either. Mary studied him, carefully, looking for something deeper behind the words, something real. She didn't find it. Her fingers rested lightly against the edge of the tablet. Still, grounded. "And what exactly are we making easier?" she asked. Walker stepped closer, not too close, just enough. Everything, he said. Business, image, alignment. He didn't say those words, but they were there. Clear enough. Mary exhaled slowly, not disappointed, not surprised, just aware. Because this wasn't love, not the kind people talked about, but it was something complicated, something unfinished. She held his gaze a second longer. Then, "Okay." Walker blinked once, a rare break in his composure. "Okay?" he repeated. Mary nodded. "Yes." No conditions, no long discussion, just acceptance. And that should have meant something. But instead, it felt like the beginning of something neither of them fully understood. The wedding was quiet, private, efficient, exactly what Walker preferred. And exactly what Mary didn't question. Not because she didn't notice, but because she chose not to. At least, not yet. Life moved forward quickly after that. Schedules merged, spaces combined, decisions shared. On the surface, it worked. Seamless, controlled, functional. But underneath, there were gaps, small at first, almost easy to ignore. Walker kept parts of his life separate, not hidden, just not offered. Phone calls he stepped away for, meetings he didn't explain, moments where his attention drifted, just slightly. When she spoke, Mary noticed. Of course she did. She noticed everything. But she didn't confront it immediately, because there was still something there, something unfinished between them, something she hadn't fully walked away from. Well, maybe it just needs time, she told herself once. The thought didn't settle, but it stayed. Walker, on the other hand, he watched her differently now, not just with interest, but with caution, because even though she had said yes, he still didn't fully trust her, didn't fully understand why she stayed. And that uncertainty, it created distance. Quiet, subtle, but growing. One evening, Mary found him on a call, his voice low, careful, different. He ended it quickly when he saw her, too quickly. "Work," he said. Before she even asked, Mary nodded, didn't question it, not out loud, but something shifted in her expression, small, almost invisible. Because, that moment, it wasn't proof, not yet, but it was enough. Enough to plant something, doubt. And once doubt settles in, it doesn't leave quietly. It waits, grows, until one day, it becomes something impossible to ignore. The restroom door opened quietly. Mary stepped out, not rushed, not hesitant, just steady. Her posture had changed, not dramatically, but enough that anyone paying attention would feel it before they understood it. Her hand brushed lightly over her stomach once, then dropped to her side, not because she forgot, but because she didn't need to hold herself together the same way anymore. She had already done that. Now, she was walking back in, different. The sound of the ballroom returned slowly. Voices, glasses, movement, but it didn't hit her the same way this time, because she wasn't walking into it as someone trying to survive the moment. She was walking into it as someone who had already decided what it meant. The doors opened, heads turned, again, but this time, The reaction wasn't curiosity, it was uncertainty. Because something about her presence had shifted. She didn't look shaken, didn't look exposed, didn't look like someone who had just been humiliated. She looked resolved. Her steps didn't slow, didn't hesitate. Each one deliberate, measured, and as she moved further into the room, conversations began to fade again. Not forced, not intentional, just happening. Because attention followed her, not out of judgment now, but awareness. The woman in red noticed first. Her smile returned quickly, confident, unbothered. But it didn't land the same, because Mary didn't react to it, didn't even acknowledge it immediately. Her eyes moved across the room once, taking everything in, then settled, calm, focused, and in that moment, it became clear. She wasn't here to respond anymore. She was here to decide. Mary stopped a few steps away from them, not too close, not distant, just enough space to control the moment. Walker turned toward her immediately, faster than before, like he had been waiting. Mary, she didn't respond, not right away. Her gaze moved to him briefly, then past him, like he wasn't the center of this anymore. And that landed harder than anything she could have said. Her expression didn't shift. No visible anger, no sadness, just stillness. The kind that doesn't ask for understanding. It demands it. Well, the woman in red said lightly, stepping forward again. Look who decided to come back. Mary finally looked at her. Direct, unwavering, no rush in her reaction, no emotion offered freely, just presence, and that alone changed the energy again. Because earlier, the woman in red had control. Now, she was testing it, trying to see if it still held. You should have stayed gone, she added with a small smile. It would have saved you the rest of this. Mary tilted her head slightly. A small pause settled. Then, no, she said, quiet. Even, I needed to see it clearly. The woman blinked once. Not expecting that, Walker stepped forward slightly. Careful now, measured, because something about Mary felt different, not distant, not cold, just unreachable. Mary, we need to talk, he said, his voice lower now, less controlled than before. Mary didn't move, didn't step toward him, didn't step away. She just looked at him, and, for the first time, he couldn't read her at all. And that unsettled him more than anything else that had happened tonight. The silence stretched, not empty, waited, because everyone felt it. That something had changed, and it wasn't going back. The woman in red crossed her arms lightly, still trying to hold her ground, still trying to keep control of a moment that was no longer hers. Well, she said, her tone sharper now. Are you going to say something, or just stand there pretending this doesn't affect you? Mary didn't answer immediately. She let the words sit, let the room sit with them. Then, she stepped forward. One step, measured, unhurried. Her gaze shifted from the woman to Walker, and held long enough to make him uncomfortable, long enough to make him aware. Then, she spoke, "Keep him." The words were soft, but they didn't feel small. They landed, clear, final. The woman in red blinked, caught off guard. "What?" she asked, almost laughing. Mary's expression didn't change. She took another step closer, not aggressive, not emotional, just certain. "Keep him," she repeated. A small pause followed. Then, her voice lowered slightly, not for secrecy, for weight. "He didn't lose me." Walker's breath caught, barely, but it showed. Mary's eyes didn't leave his, and then, the final line came, steady, unshaken. "He never deserved me." No raised voice, no dramatic delivery, just truth. And somehow, that made it hit harder, because there was no anger in it, no bitterness, just clarity, and that stripped everything else away. The woman in red let out a short laugh, but it didn't carry the same confidence anymore. "Oh, please," she said quickly. "Let's not act like you're walking away by choice." Mary turned her head slightly, just enough to look at her again. Not rushed, not reactive, and for the first time, there was something else in her gaze. Not anger, not pain, just recognition, like she had already placed her exactly where she belonged. "You think this is about him?" Mary said quietly. The woman's smile faltered, just a fraction. Mary took a slow breath, then continued, "It's not." That shifted it again, because now, the focus wasn't on Walker, not on the betrayal, not even on the humiliation. It was on her, and what she had already decided. Well, if it's not about him, then what is it? The woman pressed. Mary didn't answer her, not directly, because her attention had already moved, back to Walker, and this time, he couldn't hold her gaze for long, not the way he used to. "Mary," he started again, softer now, less certain. "I didn't." He stopped, because whatever he was about to say, it didn't hold weight anymore. Not here, not after everything. Mary watched him for a moment, not judging, not waiting, just seeing him clearly, for the first time. "You don't need to explain," she said. Calm, final, that hit harder than anger ever could, because there was no space left for him to fix it. No opening, no second chance in her tone. And that's when it showed. Regret. Real, unfiltered. Too late. Walker stepped forward slightly, like he wanted to close the distance. But something stopped him, because deep down, he understood. The moment had already passed, and she wasn't standing in it anymore. She had moved beyond it. Without him, across the room, he hadn't moved. Not during the confrontation, not during the silence that followed, not even when the attention shifted back to Mary. He had simply watched. Mary's father, still near the entrance, hands relaxed at his sides, expression unchanged. But his eyes, focused, precise. He had seen everything, not just the moment, but what it meant, what it revealed, and more importantly, what it confirmed. Mary didn't look toward him. Not yet. She didn't need to, because something deeper than sight had already connected them. Understanding, timing, and when the moment came, he moved, not forward, not loudly, just a small motion. His hand lifted slightly, barely noticeable, a subtle adjustment of his cuff. To anyone else, it meant nothing, but to the right people, it meant everything, because across the room, two men near the bar glanced at their phones at the exact same time. One of them straightened, the other stepped away quietly. No announcement, no disruption, just movement, precise, coordinated, intentional. Mary remained still, unreactive, but something inside her shifted again. Not emotional, not reactive, just aware, because she knew that signal, knew what it meant, knew what followed, and she didn't stop it, didn't question it, didn't interfere, because this wasn't about revenge in the way people understood it. This was correction, and correction didn't need noise. It needed timing. Across the room, the energy hadn't changed yet. People still whispered, still watched, still tried to make sense of what they had just witnessed. But underneath that, something else had already started, unseen, unnoticed, until it wouldn't be. Walker's phone vibrated. Once, he ignored it, still focused on Mary, still trying to process what had just slipped out of his control. Then it vibrated again, longer this time, more insistent. His jaw tightened slightly. He reached for it, glanced down, and for a moment, nothing showed. Then, his expression shifted, subtle, but real. "What is it?" the woman in red asked, her tone sharper now. Walker didn't answer immediately. His thumb moved quickly across the screen, reading, rechecking, as if the information didn't make sense the first time. Another notification came in, then another, stacking. Back to back. What do you mean the account is restricted? He said suddenly, not loud, but no longer controlled. A few heads turned. The woman frowned. Walker, what's happening? He stepped slightly away now, not far, but enough to create space. I'm handling it, he muttered. But his voice, it wasn't steady anymore. Mary watched, not with satisfaction, not with emotion, just observation, because this wasn't for her to react to, it was for him to experience. Walker's expression hardened, then shifted again. More calls, more messages. What do you mean, all transfers are on hold? He said, this time louder. A ripple moved through the room. Conversations paused. Eyes turned, because now something else was happening. Something that had nothing to do with the earlier scene, and yet somehow connected. The woman in red stepped closer. Concern, replacing confidence. Walker, talk to me. He didn't look at her, didn't respond, because whatever he was seeing, it was escalating, fast, and for the first time that night, he wasn't in control of it. Walker stepped further away from the center of the room, not to leave, but to think, or at least, try to. His phone was still in his hand, screen lighting up again, and again, each notification stacking over the last. Sir, we're getting flagged across multiple accounts. Compliance just froze the secondary line. We need immediate authorization. He cut the call, not because it was resolved, but because there were too many, too fast. What is going on? He muttered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. He dialed another number, straight to voicemail. Tried again, no answer. That didn't happen. Not to him, not in his world. People answered when he called. Systems moved when he approved. That was how it worked. Except, right now, it wasn't. His shoulders tightened, posture shifting, not dramatically, but enough to show the strain building underneath. Across the room, a few individuals who had been quietly observing earlier were now leaving, one by one, discreetly, no attention drawn, but noticeable. If you knew what to look for, Walker did, and that's when it clicked. This wasn't random. This wasn't an error. This was targeted, precise, designed. His gaze lifted, instinctively scanning the room, looking for the source, looking for the disruption, and then his eyes landed near the entrance. That man, still standing there, still calm, still watching, no reaction, no urgency, just presence. Walker's expression shifted, recognition, not familiarity, but understanding, because suddenly everything made sense, and nothing did at the same time. Walker, the woman in red's voice, had changed. Gone was the ease, the control. Now there was tension in it, sharp, unsteady. What is happening? She asked again, stepping closer. This time, he didn't brush her off, but he didn't answer her either, because he couldn't, not yet. Not when the situation was still unfolding faster than he could respond to it. My cards aren't working, she said suddenly, pulling her phone out. I just tried. Her words cut off. Her eyes flicked back to him, searching, demanding. This wasn't part of her plan. This wasn't supposed to turn. Walker ran a hand through his hair, a rare break in composure. Just, give me a second, he said. But even that, it didn't sound convincing, because seconds were already costing him more than he could calculate. Across the room, Mary finally moved her gaze, not to Walker, not to the woman, but to the man near the entrance, her father. Their eyes met, briefly, no words, no gestures, but everything was understood. Well, not everything, but enough, because this had been in motion long before tonight, long before the gala, long before the marriage had even settled into what it was. This wasn't reaction, this was preparation, the kind that didn't rush, didn't assume, didn't trust easily. Walker's voice broke through again, low, tense. What did you do? He wasn't asking the room. He wasn't asking the woman beside him. His eyes were fixed on that man, and for the first time, there was something unfamiliar in them. Not anger, not control, uncertainty, because he finally understood. This wasn't something he could stop. It had already started, and it wasn't slowing down. The air outside felt different, cooler, quieter, like the world beyond those doors had nothing to do with what just happened inside. Mary stepped out slowly. The night wrapped around her. Not cold, just still. For the first time in hours, there was no noise chasing her, no whispers, no eyes, just space. She exhaled, long, measured, her shoulders lowered slightly. Not from exhaustion, but from release. Her hand moved to her stomach again. Gently, always gently. A small movement answered her. Soft, steady. Mary's lips curved. Just a little. Not joy, not relief. Something quieter, something personal. Well? She glanced up at the sky briefly, then back ahead, because this moment, it wasn't about looking back anymore. It was about standing still long enough to understand what just shifted. Not everything, just enough. Her breathing evened out, finally, and for a second, she allowed herself to feel it. Not the humiliation, not the betrayal, but the fact that she had walked through it and didn't break the way they expected. That mattered more than anything else. Footsteps sounded behind her, not rushed, not loud, but familiar. She didn't turn immediately. She already knew who it was. Mary. His voice wasn't the same, not controlled, not composed, just human. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again, still facing forward, still not turning yet. "I know you hear me," Walker said, stepping closer. There was no authority in his tone now, no expectation, just uncertainty. Mary finally turned, slowly, meeting his eyes, and for the first time, he didn't look like the man she had known. Not the one from the office, not the one from the dinner, not even the one from earlier tonight. This version was stripped of control. "I messed up," he said. No hesitation, no excuses attached. The words landed, but they didn't move her. Mary studied him, not harshly, not softly, just honestly. "You didn't mess up," she replied. Calm, even. Walker frowned slightly, confused. "What do you mean?" he asked. Mary took a small breath. Not heavy, not strained, just enough. "You revealed who you've always been." That settled between them. Heavy, because there was no anger in it, no accusation, just clarity. Walker looked down briefly, then back at her, like he wanted to argue, but couldn't, because, deep down, he knew she wasn't wrong. He stepped closer, careful, like distance mattered now. "Is there any chance?" He started, then stopped. The words didn't come easily anymore, not like before, not when everything was controlled. Now, they had weight, and he felt it. Mary didn't answer him immediately. She let the silence breathe, not to punish him, but because rushing this moment would make it smaller than it was. Her eyes stayed on him, steady, but not the same way as before. There was no expectation left in them, no quiet hope waiting to be met, just awareness, clear, unfiltered. Her hand rested lightly on her stomach again, not out of fear, not out of defense, but as a reminder of what mattered now, of what had shifted. Walker watched her carefully, like he was trying to find something familiar in her expression, something he could still reach, but it wasn't there, not anymore. "I didn't think it would go this far," he said, his voice lower now, honest, but late. Mary nodded once, not agreeing, just acknowledging that he spoke. "Well." A small pause settled between them. Her gaze drifted for a second, not away from him, but past him, like she was looking at something beyond this moment. "Some things don't start where we think they do," she said quietly. Walker didn't respond, because he didn't fully understand it, and maybe He wasn't supposed to. Mary looked back at him, and this time, there was something softer there. Not forgiveness, not even sympathy, just closure forming. You didn't break me, she added. The words were calm, certain, but you changed what I'm willing to accept. That landed deep, because it wasn't about pain anymore. It was about growth, and growth didn't need his permission. Mary exhaled slowly, not heavy, just final, like she had reached the end of something. Without needing to define it completely, Walker stood there, still, like he wanted to step forward, but didn't know if he was allowed to anymore. Mary. He tried again, softer this time, careful. Is there any way to fix this? The question lingered, not desperate, not demanding, just uncertain. Mary looked at him, really looked at him. Not the version she once tried to understand, not the one she thought she could build something with, but the one standing in front of her now. And for a moment, something remained. Not love, not trust, just history. Shared, complicated, unfinished. Her fingers moved slightly against her stomach. A quiet reminder, a grounding, because whatever answer came next, it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about her. And what came after this? I don't know, she said. Soft, honest, real. And that was the truth. Not an ending, not a promise, just a decision waiting to be made. Mary turned slowly, not dramatic, not rushed, and began to walk away. Not from pain, not from him, but toward something else, something she hadn't fully named yet. And maybe that was the point. Some stories don't end clean. They pause, right where the choice begins. If you think she should never go back, hit like. If you think he deserves a second chance, comment below, because sometimes the hardest part isn't what happened. It's deciding what comes next. Deciding what comes next.